those that are after.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hear that music? Hear that music?
I put my SLR on and I put my filter on my lid.
Hear that music?
You know, still fresh.
Hear that music?
Go on, fresh.
Hear that music? Hear that music? Hear that music?
You know, still fresh.
Hear that music?
Go on, fresh.
Hear that music? Hear that music?
When you see this parade, what do you see? You see people from all walks of life, owning their power unapologetically and using it for those who need it. You see resilience in 1,000 forms, the strength to stand up despite so many reasons to sit down. You see imagination at every turn, a brilliance shared by creative minds, writing stories, solving problems, and painting pictures that will become our history. You see the unrivaled diversity of our people, our ideas, and the ways we're building our future. You see the energy that guides us, that drives us, that promises we're a part of something big and growing. This is not a parade, this is pride. And pride isn't going anywhere, because pride is everywhere.
God damn it. Maybe if I stuck around Hackers for Bourbon, I'd learn how to run my show. I gotta start taking like over-unders for how many times Danny fucks up in any given show. Not like if Danny fucks up, but like how many and how badly. So
you
far,
need to get
what?
You need to get a wheel to spin every time you mess it up. And you have to do whatever the wheel lands on.
Oh, there is a wheel thing. I do have a wheel widget. I don't know how to use it yet, but yeah, probably. For those keeping score at home, that is 2 times I've fucked up in 3 minutes. I initially tried to transition and forgot I had a scene that played a looping video from an event I did, and I was like, God, you know, son of a bitch. And okay, we're not gonna play that fucking video. I'm gonna play music underneath, and now it's like playing a video right after playing a video about pride and like everything. The opening ad to the music stream I use was like, "Do you approve of President Trump? Take the survey." And I was like, "Get the fuck out of here with that." Jerk-offs. Anyway, what I was saying, since nobody could fucking hear me apparently, My name is Rando, and welcome to Second Order Chaos, the Tuesday edition. I stream twice a week. Sometimes it's just screwing around, playing games, and just chatting with people, but we got some honest-to-goodness, like, do-gooding stuff happening. And as I was saying, I would say it's like a Hackers with Bourbon reunion, except I never, like, left. I just kind of stopped showing up because I got busy, or I, like, I don't know, forgot what day it was. And then in short order, Lickety stepped in and fucking does way better than I ever do. God, my forehead is shiny as fuck. All right.
Did you forget your makeup?
No, I have my makeup on, as a matter of fact. It's just that I think I have the lights too close together is what it is. I'm still experimenting with my lighting. But anyway, I'd like to welcome to the show. I don't know. Introduce yourself. Lost Knowledge. Start with you.
I am Lost Knowledge. So people who know me usually just call me Joey or Lost. Been doing Hackers with Bourbon since 2018. It's been almost 2 years since it kind of first started off, which is kind of scary to think about. And so just wanted to come on tonight. Thanks to Danny for letting us on to have a conversation about the Trevor Project, which is a charity that supports LGBTQ youth and doing crisis intervention and suicide prevention. And so it's a very important charity that does a lot of awesome work. And so we're using this Pride Month to support them. And so it's one of the big things that we're trying to do this week in particular.
Cool. Awesome. And we're going to talk all about, that's like literally, I was about to say, that's the only thing the stream is going to be about. And we both fucking know that like it's going to derail pretty quickly.
Always.
But the overarching theme and topic should be Trevor Project. I promise we won't devolve into Jackbox games. Not tonight. I don't know. Maybe. And his compatriot right next to him. Introduce yourself, Mystery Man.
I am Lickety. Probably see me around at some conferences, Circle City Con, B-Sides LV. And yeah, I'm just here to support this, part of Hackers with Bourbon, and we're doing a large stream on Saturday, so just here to be supportive.
Yeah, so for anybody who does not know, their stream is it Hacks with, I always forget, Hacks with Bourbon, or on, is it the same on Twitch and on Twitter, Hacks with Bourbon?
So it's Hack with Bourbon. So but yeah, it's the same on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook. All the things now have the same uniform name to make it easy to find.
Yeah, I mean, which just makes me even like a shittier friend, since like I should know exactly. Well, because it was called something. Didn't you call it a few different things? This is just me trying to get out of being an asshole.
Yeah, well, no. So the Twitch channel originally was my personal one, which was just under my Lost Knowledge name. And this was back before, like, Thursday nights before it was kind of officially Hackers with Bourbon, was kind of just like, hey, we're gonna hang out. I'll have like different people on, and we'll just kind of chat and do whatever. And then a few people like really enjoyed like kind of the fact that we were drinking and stuff while we were hanging out. So that's kind of how it evolved into Hackers with Bourbon. And then over time, some of the other streams I was doing just kind of fell by the wayside because, like most things, a lot of the projects and stuff I would do on stream on weekends just kind of fell to the wayside as like real life took over. So I used to do a little bit more like hacking projects and stuff on the weekends, which is why it was kind of just my personal stream. And then now, since it's primarily just the Hackers with Bourbon kind of brand, that's when we shifted the name and started using that for the Twitch stream.
And so yeah, let's start talking about Trevor. So what exactly is Trevor Project, and what is your involvement in it? Are you just supporting it? Are you actively involved in it, and why? Because you're, like you said, this Saturday on Hack with Bourbon is a 12-hour stream, correct? Yeah,
12 hours, because I don't have the energy to do 24.
Lots and lots of cocaine, my friend. Lots of cocaine. I got like I actually have dual citizenship in Bolivia by now. I don't recommend 24, 36, 48 to anybody. But dude, 12 is still 12 is
Yeah.
a big effing deal, man. Like I remember on my last really long one, I went downstairs after talking for the first 3 hours, and I was like, "Oh man, it's been a long 12 hours." Nope, 3 hours. Still 21 more to go. So yeah, tell me about well, what is Trevor Project?
So, kind of like I summarized before, Trevor Project is the world's largest suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ youth. Um, so they target the kind of 25 and under is kind of their target age range. And so they do this through a series of different methods. They have 24/7 phone support. They have chat systems, text-based systems. They have like an online forum, and kind of an online place that they call Trevor Space. And so all these things, and I the history of the organization is so it started in the late '90s, and actually came about as a result of a couple of individuals who were involved in the production of an Oscar-winning short film called Trevor. If people are interested, it's like a 28-minute video, like a 28-minute video, something like that. And it's available on YouTube on the Trevor Project's YouTube page. But basically, coming out of that, they realized, that there was a need for support for youth who maybe, had these, feelings of not necessarily kind of belonging to what society generally considers the normal kind of range, just normal heterosexual and, gender as assigned at birth kind of setting that kind of society kind of has set up over time. And so because of that, they created this organization that originally started out kind of as just phone support and then grew over time to kind of add all these other features and functionalities in. And so, it's, as a member of the kind of LGBTQ community, it's something that's important to me, and something that I was really interested in raising money for during Pride this year in particular because with the current situations going on, COVID-19, the protests, everything else, those are things that have a very big mental health impact just on us in normal day-to-day life. But tack onto this young adults and teenagers who may have been thrust into staying at home in situations where they can't be out. So for a lot of young people, school can be their release, especially if they have unaccepting parents, or their friends' families may be their release. And if they're unable to go to those methods, they're in and go to those places where they can feel safe. They're in much more high stress situations. And so because of this, I believe they've seen an increase in use over the last couple of months. And I think it's important to ensure that these children, teenagers, young adults all have the ability to have access to those resources. And it's great because there really weren't these sorts of resources when I was younger. By the time Trevor Project started, I was almost out of high school. And I don't even know if I would have known where to look for it. So now that these resources are out there, being able to make sure that they are known about, so that so that the people who need them can find them, and two, to make sure that they have the funds they need to be able to operate is very important. And so that's kind of a big drive behind why I wanted to do this drive during Pride, and it helps that Twitch was going and partnering with the Trevor Project to do a lot of these fundraising efforts anyway. So that means Twitch is also enabling kind of promoting specific hashtags for promotion of kind of streaming with pride and the Trevor Project. And so when there's more than one or two people in the community and the streaming community doing it, it's easier for people to kind of get that amplification and that noise. I definitely wanted to make sure that at Hackers at Bourbon we could be a part of that, to kind of help drive that, particularly in the hacker community. We've seen with the work that you did to help raise money for the kids in Bolivia. The hacker community can be very giving to the people who need it most. And the people that the Trevor Project supports need that support, and need to have the access to these sorts of things. So anything that we can do to kind of help in that, I'm always wanted to kind of try to do.
So, point of order, it was for the kids in Belize. The kids in Bolivia are just fine from my drug addiction. Like they're okay.
You see, I fucked up one. You fucked up twice. We're good.
Killing two birds with one stone. Trust me, they're all driving like Mercedes by now. Like they're fine. Haha for self-coping. So what are you planning on doing for your show? Well, you know what? We'll get to that in just a second. And if there's anybody in the chat that has had experience with the things that the Trevor Project is looking to help with, I'd love to hear stories. I'd love to hear stories in the chat. If there's anybody in there that has had to come out. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine, because like I'm straight myself. I can't imagine. Like to me, it would seem, and this would be a very ignorant thing to say, so I'd rather not say it. But like it would seem that it's a little easier nowadays, but I don't necessarily believe that. Than rather when I was in high school and middle school like that. Being in that community. What's your take on it, Lost? Like, is it easier nowadays? It's still as scary? I mean, I guess it's different, even more different now with the current administration, but.
Yeah, it's really very different. And it kind of varies from, region to region, right? I think, we see this in a lot of different ways. Just as an example, since I grew up in a relatively large town in what is technically the South, and I remember kind of how people who were assumed to be, or even just people that were like teased because you must be gay, or I don't want to use the F word. But you'd have people who would be targeted like this, even if they weren't, because they didn't meet those norms. And where I grew up, people very rarely came out, and that was, like I said, I graduated high school in 2000. So yeah, it was 20 years ago. But even then, I think the way we looked at it there was much different than like what you would see in like New York and probably California and places like that, where they may have been a little bit more progressive even back then. But you even have to look at the state of laws 20 years ago, and how they impacted gay rights, which were still basically none. And so, it's definitely gotten easier over the course of 20 years, but there's definitely still situations that aren't conducive for individuals, whether that's family situations, families who are overly religious, people growing up in like really rural towns, people who, sometimes people just don't, their family may not understand, and if or they could be in a situation where they truly believe, and it may actually be true that if they came out, their parents would, throw them out of the house, disown them. That's assuming they wouldn't go to more drastic measures like abusing the child, or trying to do things like conversion therapy, which is in of itself a abuse of children and becoming increasingly illegal in the U.S. Thankfully. So, I think the situation is different, for sure, but there are definitely plenty of situations where it's needed, and where people can use the assistance. And one group in particular who I think this is very true for, um, and yes, this will be a little bit of my own bias, but is the trans community. And this is in part because of a lot of what we've seen in recent years, um, with regards to some of the actions of the current administration, but also just even outside of that, it's only been within the last like 5 years or so where multiple states attempted to pass bathroom bills to prevent trans people from being able to use the restroom of their preferred gender, or their the gender they identify as. um, and so and for youth, like, not being able to compete in sports because, well, they're not, they weren't allowed, well, for many parts they weren't allowed. And then as you look into, and then as people, so great example of this is, as people were finally starting to allow trans female athletes to compete in high school athletics, the Department of Education, within the last month, released a statement that basically said, if you allow trans girls to compete against cisgendered women or cisgendered girls in high school athletics, you're violating Title IX, and we will pull your money. And so states can't afford to lose their federal funding for schools, so they basically just said every transgendered girl can't compete in athletics, because it, in their mind, it was a violation of Title IX. While under the Obama administration, they basically said the exact opposite, which is kind of what enabled more of those athletics to start being performed. Another big one was last week. The Department of Health and Human Services issued a rule that modified an Obama era rule that that basically would enable, and does enable, healthcare providers to discriminate against transgendered patients and refuse to treat them on the basis of religious grounds. So last week in particular, so like, to give it a good example of like the need for this, that ruling and several other things going on were really stressful within the trans community in particular. And honestly, we had all been sitting around, both trans and the rest of the LGBTQ community, waiting for the Supreme Court to rule on whether or not we could be fired for being gay or trans or lesbian or queer or non-binary or any other letter. And much to some of our surprise, the Supreme Court ruled we cannot be. I think a lot of us were prepared for the worst. And let me tell you, that ruling released on Monday was a huge relief for many people in those communities, particularly after all of the stuff from the last few weeks. It was so, like, for me personally, like, it was a very like a weight kind of lifted, because you worry about, well, what happens if I come out at work, what happens if I what happens if somebody finds out that I haven't told, and it gets back before I can come out, right? And you have all these concerns and issues and worries, and so to have that knowledge that that we have the same level of protection as everyone else, and basically, as that ruling on Monday went, because of basically the argument was essentially was that sex include, if you make a decision to fire a gay person or trans person, you're making that decision based on their sex. And it was an argument that, like, I had hoped somebody would use, and was very much how some of the textualists and the lawyers made the argument, that it's essentially the argument kind of being, well, can you discriminate against gay people in work? Well, if you discriminate against a man because he loves a man, but you wouldn't discriminate against a woman for that same thing, then the sex of the person you discriminated against came into play. So, I'm kind of diving off onto like the tangent now of that law, but and that decision. But I think, had that gone the other direction, um, I can only imagine how horrible this week would have been for like everybody in the LGBT community. Um, I don't think it would have been like everyone's going to be lined up outside and we're all going to be fired. There probably would have been some people who would have been, just because of the way some people in business think. But at the same time, the a decision going in the other direction would have just, on top of everything else in the last couple of weeks, would have just been too much.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just doing a couple certain. It's not funny, but it's also something, and I don't know what kind of dickhead this makes me, but I was not even aware, because I think this is the other dangerous part about all this, is that we're all still there's so much shit happening, and it's inundated, and I didn't even know there was a thing going on until well after. I was like laying in bed last night, and I was like, oh, something happened at the Supreme Court today. And then I felt like a real jerk off. But like, how I don't know how to pay it. There's so many things to try to pay attention to. And I was just looking at, there's an article in the New York Times. This headline just slays me, because at least now maybe they know what the rest of us were thinking when the court started being packed with people that were fucking horrified of. Conservative Christians see seismic implications in Supreme Court ruling, and they're freaking out about how they're going to operate their own things. They're like, okay, well, now welcome to our world of freaking out about how you think your life's going to change.
Yeah. And that's it's people, it's really interesting when like that, when people complain and make those comments, because what's interesting is if you look at the best estimates for the number of LGBTQ people in the US, like the highest estimates you're ever going to see are maybe 5%. 5% of the population. That's it. And so, and transgender is an even smaller portion of that, right? I think people sometimes think that number's a lot larger, because sometimes the way issues are portrayed, and I don't want to, like, I don't know, I hate getting into this, like, which media is what type of media, right? But whenever an attack against like transgender rights comes about, there's all these like vilifications and arguments that are made. But what's very funny is a lot of times they're arguing about transgendered women. So they're talking about, they're talking about all these assigned male at birth who are, in the either, at different stages of, living the lives as women that they want to live, because we're all going to be men in dresses and in ladies' rooms. But it totally ignores one of the other big parts of the transgender community, which is the trans men, which are all the, assigned female at birth who are living as, as men. And, living the identity that, and how they feel. And so, and for them, there's just as much risk and danger in the various bathroom situation, because, especially the second they start testosterone, you'll give testosterone, and hormone replacement therapy. It does not take significant amounts of time for those impacts to be apparent, just within months. And so now you can start having these people who, if you, use these laws and use these things, you can have these trans men who would be forced to use ladies' rooms, but are going to look a hell of a lot like men to everybody in that ladies' room. So how comfortable is that for anybody, right? And they're at just as much, they're actually at a higher risk using their own assigned bathroom, because apparently there's a rash of guys who, when they see this, like, to create violence because, guys get drunk, guys get stupid, or guys are just testosterone driven jerks. Not all of them, but there's a fair share. Um, and hatred does a scary thing to people. Well, it's actually more fear than hatred, but yeah. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred.
For anybody
Is that how it
wondering,
goes?
yeah, for anybody wondering, the split of the vote was 6-3,
Yep.
and the three who dissented were, no surprise, Brett Kavanaugh, Alito, and Clarence Thomas joined Alito's dissent. Get the fuck out of here! What?
That's one of the things that's always interesting and is a real hard cognitive dissonance to me sometimes. And I don't want to get too deep into this because of the current climate of things. It's hard to have these conversations sometimes for me. But the anybody who wants to fight for anyone who has seen equal rights and the necessity for civil rights for minorities and can't see that need and desire for trans individuals and gay individuals and lesbian individuals. And if you read their dissent, it's very much they're like, well, the other six are all legislating from the bench. We think transgendered people and gay people should all be protected, but Congress should take care of that. And it's very like weasel wordy, and I try to avoid, like, I know some people are very much like attacking the judges, and I also try to avoid that because there is something to be said for the various means of interpreting the wording. But some of them, definitely more than others, were probably a little bit angry because they were arguing whether or not the argument. So if you really dig into the whole concept of judges and how they interpret law, the thought process was that Grush, whatever the fuck you're supposed to say his name,
Groucho, I don't know.
yeah, that he's a text, that he's
Thank you, Lickety.
yes, that he's a textualist,
About time to
which
speak up.
which means that basically he reads the law and interprets it in the plain language. So he's not using, there's several different methods of interpreting, but one of the other very common ones is you look at the language of the law, but then you also look at like what was thought about or conceived when the law was written, right? So it'd be this argument, like the inverse argument to reading that law the way it was written, the Civil Rights Act, would be to go back to 1964 and say, well, there's no way they considered sexuality and gender identity as covered under sex. And so that would be the other way to interpret that law, and then to decide to vote the other way. But the textualist answer, and so that's one of the things people are really upset about, because when Garush, I'm just going to butcher his name all night. When he wrote the opinion, so he wrote the majority opinion, and when he took that position, everybody said, well, that's not the textualist interpretation, and he's da-da-da, and they just went off on the rails. Including, so in a bit of irony, when we talk about the swamp, the wife of the person who works at HHS that wrote the policy that took away transgendered healthcare rights spent $10 million through her foundation to get him put on the bench. So just process that. Large chunks of money were spent to ensure an individual would get onto the bench, and they're not real happy about it. Oh, and guess what? Their spouse was also attacking the rights of LGBTQ individuals. So it's a very, like, while things have gotten better as we go back, kind of trace this back around, it's still very scary and uncertain a lot of times. And you don't know what's going to happen because without things really kind of codified into law, without those protections clearly identified and in place, it can all be taken away tomorrow. And so that's really scary for people to think about and to have to consider kind of what might happen, what could happen.
Yeah, in regards to whether it's special interest groups, politicians, self-proclaimed Christians, a lot of people, like you said, don't understand it, so they fear it and can easily be combative about it and say you're threatening my way of life, even though you're doing nothing to them, and it's kind of sad.
This was so last week when the HHS ruling rule came out. It was for me, it was also just the part of a really long week, right? I had a bunch of stuff going on last week, and one of the things that I asked somebody, and this is another trans individual on Twitter, and I literally made the comment essentially like, why the hell does my existence bother them so much? Like, I'm not asking for anything special. I'm not asking for anything crazy. I'm literally just asking to live. And to be able to do so without fear of being unemployed or being homeless or being killed and people getting away with it because they were scared I was trans, which is a legit defense in several states, by the way. There's similar laws also for that allow that defense for killing a homosexual. The gay panic defenses and trans panic defenses are legal in several states.
Why can't I rob a bank and claim financial panic?
Yeah, right.
Like, she's like,
but that's just it, right? And what's funny is if you look at it, a lot of the same arguments that people that are made from the religious people on these issues are very similar to the same arguments they made for not giving African Americans the right to vote and not giving them not wanting to give them equal protection under the law.
yeah, 3/5 is good enough, right?
Yeah, right. It's yeah. So Alkaline Nerd's dropping some stats in, and I don't have all the numbers, but yeah, trans people are more likely to be unemployed or underemployed, even when they are employed. There's just so much. There's so many avenues that discrimination is still legal, and even though that case, ruled in our favor on Monday, the ruling only applies to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which covers employment. So until somebody sues and a case gets adjudicated, whoa.
Yeah, no, hold on, I'm fixing it.
Stop breaking shit, Danny.
I'm not. I'm guilty of the things that I yell at people for in pre-production, and I do it apparently in fucking prod. So that's for anybody who saw that go fucky behind the curtain a little bit. Is I like my guests to be able to see me, but they can't when my this main camera right here is taken up by the broadcasting software. So I join. We're in Discord because I'm trying to tell Zoom to fuck off in my own life. So I bring my other camera on my laptop on this, but if I don't remember to like jiggle the mouse, then like everything goes screwy. So anyway, I'm super professional. I can't believe I made $130 off of this stream last month.
So yeah, but no, and there's still so many risk factors, particularly for transgendered individuals. But you still run into problems. LGBTQ people still kind of run into some of those things, and it's kind of scary to think about, and to process it. I mean, it was only a few years ago. I mean, we're not talking like ancient history here, and we just passed the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting.
Feels like a million years ago.
Yeah. I mean, but it wasn't that long.
I mean, as Red said earlier, like the whole privilege thing is like it's not Yeah, it feels like 100 for some people. It was like it's probably just yesterday.
Yeah. And so, and those are the things that like, um, and I think the thing is, right, you see a lot that, these things kind of happen in the moment, and people don't always, during that moment, right, there'll be coverage or there'll be something talked about. And I think this is also the danger of our like 24/7 news cycle. Stories don't stick around. So that one, once it was resolved, moved off, and it wasn't something that most media is going to cover the anniversary of every year, right? It's not an event that most of them are going to talk about, particularly if there's other big news stories going on, that are of more importance to them.
So, you and I have been chattering like yentas this whole time. Look, Kitty, any points that you want to hit? I mean, I just like having your
No, I
face up
mean,
there.
I'm here to learn too. Like, there's a lot about this that I don't understand that I haven't had exposure to, and it's not that I live a sheltered life. It's just this is exactly on it. Like, it's just not something that's in my face or that I'm wholly aware of. So,
So,
No,
yeah.
I mean, I'll admit to being just as ignorant as you guys were, back before I kind of came out. I mean, it's been a big, it's been very eye opening to kind of see a lot of the stuff that I didn't necessarily like, have insight into, because they were either things I wasn't tracking or things that just weren't covered, in the news cycle and in the resources that I was regularly having access to, right? I didn't, have a ton of friends who I knew were, LGBTQ. Like, the reality is, I mean, not everybody is very open about it. Or I've also learned, like, the counter to that now is you get a lot of people who are like, oh, you didn't know? Like, they're so it's so common to be out now that like it's kind of like, well, some people are at the point where it's kind of like, oh, I just figured everybody knew, kind of thing.
right.
So, and it's very interesting that there's a spectrum, of that you see, and I think a lot of that is kind of, some of that I think is also around just the different situations that some of us were raised in. Um, you know, where I was raised, when I was raised, is much different than somebody who was raised in a more metropolitan area, and is, just now, hitting 18, 19, 20 years old. And scary enough, that's actually half my age. So,
You're so old.
yeah,
You're aging nicely, though, if I may say.
thank you.
Lickety, not so much. For anybody who doesn't know, like, Lickety's actually 22 years old.
Oh man, I wish.
Got run over by the father time truck. No,
Yeah.
you're gorgeous. You're beautiful.
Don't worry. Just wait for Thursdays and Saturdays stream. I'll look so much younger.
It's gonna rejuvenate you. You need good waxing. Yeah, no, I mean, so where I grew up, I actually ended up for like the first 8 years I lived in Jersey, and then when I moved to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which I mean just has the reputation, rightly so, for being more conservative, being and not even because of the Amish and the Mennonite, like they don't give a shit about people. They keep to themselves, which is nice. But just traditionally more Christian. I mean, even coming there, we were Catholic when I grew up, and it was like to me, Catholics were just like, we got to do this fucking thing every hour for a Sunday, and that's it. And then I met like the really hardcore Christians, and it was you kind of suspect, but it wasn't even really something you thought about because nobody talked about it. Nobody was even like pontificating on who might be gay or queer or transgender or whatever. But it hit me like a ton of bricks when I was right before my freshman year of high school. I had a really good friend of mine who we hung out all summer, and like I never saw it coming. It turns out that he was gay, and I guess long story short, he might trigger some people. So just FYI warning, 3, 2, 1. He ended up killing himself. Apparently his mom, I don't know why she ever would have, but she never showed us like the note that he left. But apparently he was gay. He was scared. He was scared that somebody else was going to kill him first. And then like something with his babysitter like taking advantage of him and things like that. And that's it's been with me ever since. And so I don't think you have to go too far to find people that have been affected by things like this of kids. He was maybe 15. I think he was 15 maybe. And I'm already over double that. I've lived double the life that he had. So that's, I mean, I still think about that kid every day. So you don't have to go too far to find something like this that that has affected people. So, and how you can look at that, even under the most religious circumstances, and then there will still be people that will turn around and be like, well, now he's in, what, is he in double hell now because he was gay and he killed himself? Like, fucking hypocrites. Like, so yeah, it's just one of those things where I and then the other thing that I was thinking about as we were talking, you had mentioned the bathroom thing of people freaking out that everybody's gonna rape everybody and it's gonna be a thing. I went to the first time I was ever in I don't know what you call it, like a complete gender, I don't know, like an all gender bathroom, was when I was in Seattle for work, and there's this restaurant where it's like a brewery, I forget where it is, it's near Baka Bak in Seattle, and you could bring your food in, you could play games, and I walked into the bathroom not knowing, and I damn near shit myself because I walked in and I saw a dude, then I saw what appeared to be a woman, a lot of women, and I'm sitting there going, ooh, I'm sorry. And then I didn't see any fucking hellfire. I didn't see anybody assaulting everybody. Like fucking, I don't know. I don't know where. I think my main point of both of those stories was my reaction to seeing this play out, not actually having, you know. I was almost about to say no skin in the game when that is completely fucking false, because I have a shit ton of skin in the game. Some of my skin is sitting on my guest panel right now. Some of my skin, like especially from being in the hacker scene, my worldview has completely opened up, and I have lots of skin in the game. So to say that just because I don't see it every day, or nobody I live with is in that community, is false. I think more people should actually try to think about that. Do you have skin? Like, you think you don't have skin, but maybe you do. Maybe you should look at that.
That's just it. If these sorts of things don't directly impact like your daily life, they probably impact the daily life of someone you know. There's somebody who has probably at some point in time had concerns about how their gender identity or sexuality may cause them to lose a job or to be attacked by some random stranger, or could be used against them, even if it's just for like harassment. The number of people who will just do stupid shit and even just saying names. But the problem for a lot of people in the situation, especially when you're in a vulnerable group like that, is you don't know when like stupid name calling is going to turn into something more violent. And that's a scary thought. It can be very traumatic for people. I'm fortunate to some extent in how large I am, both in height and in size. Because I think even when presenting more feminine, I still look imposing enough to not draw direct interaction from anybody.
Yeah.
I've caught people giving me like side eye or scoffing or mumbling under their breath, but nobody has ever had the nerve to date to say anything to my face.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Joe, you what, 6'4"?
Like 6'3".
Like, I have spent a lot of time weightlifting. Like, you wouldn't know it after quarantine or whatever, but like I spent a lot of time like weightlifting and studying martial arts, and never a day in my life has gone by, even before I knew you as one of my good friends that you are, that I would ever dream of fucking with you, especially not in heels. I've never had a heel. Well, no, I was about to say I've never had a heel dug into my balls, but that's false. I've never had a heel dug into my balls in abject anger. How about that? There was always some kind of tit for tat.
There was our tangent.
It only took us 45 minutes.
Just 45.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
It's
yeah. I don't even know where to go from there, Danny. Thanks.
Well, and you know, given your stature, like I'm 6 foot, and I have to look up at
Are you really?
Yeah,
Have we met in person? Look at it.
probably
Okay.
somewhere.
No. Yeah, like even all other tall people are like, fuck, that's like that's why when you see Joey walking around in a red shirt at Circle, you're like, I'm listening to whatever they say.
Yeah, I think that's what got her the role of head of security.
This is the place in Cap Hill. Ah, yes. Optimism Brewing Company in Seattle. Shout out to them. Yep. They also have signs everywhere about. Again, I learn all kinds of stuff going to Seattle, man. About like the whole tipping culture and things. Like they have huge things about like how there's no tipping involved and they pay them living. Like it's like they're a really good brewing company. Like that's a good company, I think, that you'd want to work for. DNS Princess says I'm 5'10", present female, and each time I walk into a men's bathroom, no one says shit. That's because you just have that aura about you. I'm like, that's not a person I'm about to fuck with.
Pretty much. That's exactly what I was thinking.
It's a very commanding presence, I believe.
Oh God, she just needs to shoot you a look, and you're like, well, I'm just not. I'm gonna do whatever Alyssa says, legal or not. No, man, it's of course my stream being what it is. Of course, I had to throw in some kind of kink and high heels and balls. But yeah,
it's in your contract, right?
Yeah, it's a contract that I wrote for myself, being the sole proprietor of this clusterfuck. So in our last few minutes with this, 12 hours this Saturday. What do you guys got planned?
Oh man, so much stuff. We're going to be doing kind of just a bunch of different presentations. We still have a couple open slots, so if anybody is interested, we're going to have kind of just different technical hacker talks. We're going to have professional talks. We're going to have LGBTQ like policy type talks is the best way. Like policy is the wrong word, but it's the one that just popped in my head. I'm planning to kind of do like an intro to like LGBTQ plus for allies and other people who may get confused by the like alphabet soup that can sometimes be the terminology.
I remember like real quick without you say that, every time I always I think this was my first time at really ever hearing the term LGBT. Well, back then it was like LGBT. Like there was no Q, there was no plus. Like so this was, I think, I forget who. This had to be minimum 10 years ago, 15 years maybe, because that's right when I met my wife. I was working in radio, and there was some kind of election. I think I forget which. Oh, it was the Obama, like the first Obama term. And I was doing this gig down on the waterfront out here in Pennsylvania in Harrisburg. Harrisburg sits on a waterfront. And I was passing by this booth, and there was a sticker that was like LGBT for Obama or for somebody. And I was I was going to vote for Obama anyway, so I took the sticker not knowing what the fuck it was. And I started getting like weird looks, or my friends were like, "What the fuck you doing with that?" And I was like, "I don't know. It was a cool sticker, it had a rainbow on it." And they're like, "You do know what that means, right?" So like as recently as whenever Obama's first term was, whenever that was, 2000, was that 4, 6? What was it?
8.
Okay. Was it?
Right.
Yeah,
So
8. Yeah.
2008.
Oh, wow, yeah.
As recently as 2008. I mean, recently. It's 12 years already. I didn't know. I was like. And then I knew, and I was like, well, all right, like that's cool. And then I fall out of it because I'm not in that community. So like I didn't know when it was Q got added and then plus and all those kind of things. So even talking about that for people like me would be useful.
Yep. Nope. Yeah. So we're gonna be doing that. And like I said, we have a couple. We still have some spots open, so if people are interested, anyone's welcome. I'm not like strictly limiting it to it, but I definitely have a preference for people like who are LGBTQ who want to come on and talk about anything. It doesn't have to be like some uber elite hack. It can be, an intro thing. It's one of the things we got on the schedule is kind of like is a lock sport oriented talk that's going to be kind of just introduction level. Um, and then, like I said, I'm going to do the Allies talk. We're going to have a little bit of an opening at the beginning to go over Trevor Project and show people some of the resources. And we'll probably be interjecting some of that stuff into our break times as well. So we're just going to have a couple of like 15-minute breaks broken into the day. So not just I can get up and go walk away from the screen for 10 minutes, but so can everybody else who needs to get a drink or, go to the bathroom.
Oh, you mean I don't need a bucket? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no
Thank
bucket.
No, you use the goddamn bucket. We don't need you distracted. All right, cool. So you're going to be streaming to twitch.tv/hackwithbourbon?
Yep.
Cool. I got the URL right. And I've had the donate link up this entire show. So to donate to the Trevor Project, just go to that link right there. They will be live starting when on Saturday. It starts on
Midnight on Saturday, Eastern time.
Right.
So we're gonna go 12 hours from noon to midnight, basically. And we're also doing our regular shows. So all of our regular shows are also still devoted to raising money for that this during the month. So our regular Thursday 9 p.m. show will also be going off as usual.
Awesome. Well, I'll do what my little paltry part is to amp up the signal for it. I think it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see you at hour 12. That's going to be equally awesome for me. So, Lost Knowledge, Lickety, Hack with Bourbon, Trevor Project. This was awesome. Thanks for spending an hour with an old deserter of your show.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thanks.
It's very great to be able to boost the noise for stuff like this.
Hell yeah! All right, I will see y'all on Saturday then.
Yeah. See you then.